Hey, I'm Sharon Pearson and welcome to this episode of Perspectives. This episode really means so much to me. Recently, I was in Fairfield, Connecticut in the United States, and I was staying with my dear friend, Jennifer. She's an amazing human being. We met about 18 years ago now, and she is the reason I became a life coach. We were sitting outside at my beautiful home, having a glass of wine, and just talking about where are we heading, what are we going to do? And she just said, you should be a coach. I didn't even know what it was. I didn't know it existed. And we walked through it. And at that time, she was just starting to train to be a family therapist or just starting to think about it. And I thought, I can't be a coach. I can't help anyone, but I can help myself. So that journey for me was really about me helping me. And it all got started with Jen. And I remember phoning her up one day saying, I'm terrified. I don't think I can do it. I'm just so scared. And she gave me the classic words that I've used to this day. I still say this to so many people, and it's always attributed to Jen. Of course you feel afraid. Anyone would in your situation. You're about to go to another level. How else could you feel? And I remember just feeling, it was an amazing feeling of being validated and being allowed to feel what I feel, which is something I was so unfamiliar with. So she gave me very many gifts in the early days of our friendships and continues to. She's beautiful. You're going to meet her sound for yourself very shortly. She's warm and kind-hearted and values-driven. She lives a life that is aligned around what matters to her the most, which is her family and making a difference through her therapy work. She has crafted a life for herself that is so suited to who she is. It's one of the many things I admire about her so much. And the fact that we've maintained such a beautiful and close relationship across the miles for all these years means so much to both of us. So anyway, I got to stay in her beautiful home for a couple of days in Connecticut. We went hiking together. And then one morning I said, we should do a podcast. And we started chatting and it went for over 2 hours. And so what we've done is we've split it into 2 parts, and you're going to want more and more of this woman when you hear her. In the first part, we talk about her approach to therapy, and she's a trained therapist. How does she approach therapy? What's her philosophy behind therapy? What is she thinking about attending to? What is she weaving into her therapy, and how does she bring that to life? That's going to be the first part of the podcast. And the second part, which will be playing down the track, again with us just sitting on her couch in her beautiful home, we digress, and it just naturally moved into chatting about family, because one of the things I've admired about her all these years, we became friends when her youngest son was just born and wasn't walking, just a baby. And I've watched her as she's been a mother, raising her 3 beautiful children. They're amazing human beings. And all of them have gone on to start crafting lives that are based on their values, what they care about, what they stand for. And at young ages, they know that. Now, one of the things Jen will be the first to tell you, she's not a perfect mother and they're not a perfect family. They have ups and downs. They're flawed. She insists that message comes across. And I, of course, admire that about her as well, the humility she has. But there is still an underpinning there of love being expressed in a really functional and loving way. And you're going to see that come across in the part 2 of this podcast with Jen. Now I'm going to read here because I want to get her title right, and titles aren't my strengths. So she's a clinical supervisor and member of the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapy, and also an adjunct professor at Fairfield University. And she works as a family therapist and therapist. And I know some of the work she does at the university. She works as a supervisor. So new therapists who are training, she sits, she could be standing, she's with them, helping them craft their own narrative style as therapists. And I say to her nearly every time we talk about this topic, anyone who I could get emotional. Anyone who's fortunate enough to be trained by this woman is going to be just the most phenomenal therapist. And I hope you love her, and I know you'll love her as much as I do. So here's Jen. Hey, this is Sharon Pearson. I'm in Fairfield, Connecticut, and I'm here with my dear friend Jen Slack, who is a therapist and a phenomenal human being. And I'm so thrilled to be able to share with you today her message in her words. Welcome, Jen. How are you?
Thank you, Sharon. It's wonderful to be here with you, my dear friend.
Yeah. So we've known each other for?
Since 2001.
18 years.
Yeah.
And we met before we were both moving into what became our passions.
Yes.
And our songs.
Yeah.
We were trying to figure out our passions and
Yeah.
our songs. They were conversations we had.
Yeah.
Over Chardonnay in the backyard.
Exactly. And I think we helped each other kind of identify and crystallize how to manifest those passions.
I'll always remember that moment. Can I share that moment?
Please.
Yeah. For some reason I said I was going to be a coach. We'd come to that together over a glass of Chardonnay in my backyard. It was my turn to host. And then I was on the phone with you saying I was really scared. And you said, of course you are. Anyone in your situation would feel that way. You're going to a different level. You're about to have new experiences you've never had before. How else could you feel? And it was the most beautiful validation. And from there, I was able to leap into it completely blind, Jen. We say it's a leap of faith. I didn't have faith. It was a leap without anything but those comforting words. So I'll always remember that moment. Do you remember it, or do you?
I do.
You do.
No,
yeah.
I do.
Yeah, it was very significant to me to feel that validated. Instead of my fears being dismissed. I was used to hearing, you'll be okay, or it'll work out.
Yeah.
But you just accepted and embraced and held beautifully my uncertainty about it. It was very valid, and that's what enabled me to launch into something that I felt incredibly ill-equipped to do.
Well, you might not have had faith, but you had courage.
Yeah.
And you were willing to explore the unknown territories and just dive in.
Yeah.
And figure it out.
And I did.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, I did.
And then some.
And then some. And you began studying when you were in Melbourne.
I did. Yep. So I began a graduate program there.
Yeah.
In psychology.
Yeah.
And then we moved back to the States in 2003, and I picked up and began my marriage and family therapy master's degree.
Wow.
With 3 kids of my own. I went through slowly at a pace that worked for me.
Yeah. And all your kids were at that stage, under about 12, weren't they? All 3 of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
2 years apart each.
Yes.
So it was a lot.
It was a lot. And then tell us a little bit more about what you've done since then to get us up to now, and then we'll go into your philosophy of...
So I studied at Fairfield University, and I interned at a neighborhood clinic where I stayed on for a total of 12 years and became a supervisor, and then eventually the clinical director. And then I left just coming up on a year ago to invest fully in a private practice. And now I teach a class at Fairfield University and do supervision.
Of psychology or family therapy?
Family therapy.
Yeah, it's family therapy.
It is.
So Fairfield enabled you to study in family therapy?
Yes.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And what were the kind... Because I'm interested, what were the kind of... who was the influences in that program? Who were they drawing on?
Structural and strategic models, primarily, with a little limited exposure to postmodern approaches as well.
Yeah.
But really largely based in the modernist perspectives.
So pre-70s, pre-60s.
Yes.
When it was a little bit more objective.
Exactly.
A little less...
Black boxy.
Yes, yeah. So who are the main influences for you philosophically? Who do you feel you draw on or empathize with or connect with in terms of approaches to therapy and family therapy?
I have to say that the underpinnings of structural therapy, Minuchin's, the graphic, spatial, physical metaphors of that model in particular are like a scaffolding for me. Very, very helpful. But my way of being with people is much more grounded in postmodern approaches, which for me are all about exploring with people, not having answers outside of the exploration necessarily. But then continuing on now, what we're learning in terms of neuroscience and brain chemistry and just the organic aspects that are playing a role also, that maybe have to do more with like an individual's organic system as much as a family system.
Interesting.
I think there are so many different kind of layers to explore in terms of doing therapy.
How much do you draw on systems theory around for family therapy, even if you're working with one individual?
Yeah, I think heavily, even if I define it in the way I just did.
Yeah.
So even if I'm working with an individual on individual behaviors and patterns of interacting with people, and we're not really talking about their family so much, I'm thinking about context, and I'm thinking about maybe their individual systems, like their organic body systems.
Yes. You often share with me how when you're with a client, where are you feeling that? The question, I'm indicating with my hands right now, like people can see me, but you can. Where are you feeling that? Where is that sitting with you? That's a big part of how you work. So it's, to you, is that a way of helping the client bridge the cognition to the feeling? So that's one of the ways I use it. It gets, I think, I feel physically is a way of chaining it to I feel, I have an emotion. Do you ever use it that way, or is...
Yes, definitely. And the other way.
Yeah.
Because sometimes people come in with a lot of awareness about what their body's feeling, but they aren't connecting it to a cognition or vice versa. And I think ultimately it's all
good.
It's all unified.
Yes.
We like to separate it in our Western culture, but it's all one thing. And I just, I think having multiple modalities to better understand a person's experience is going to be better.
Yes. Yeah. When you began, what was your feeling or your thought around working with people? Did you have a philosophy or a bent or an expectation back then? And I'd be interested to know how it's grown over the years.
I think it's grown in a lot of ways and changed as I learn more about just a lot of the neuroscience pieces of this, and my ideas about diagnosing have shifted a lot over the years and continue to shift back again a little bit too. Well, in family therapy, the idea of diagnosing a person is largely frowned upon.
Yeah.
And I think for really good reasons, because it's subjective. Diagnoses are very subjective, and there's been a lot of harm done around diagnosing. And yet still sometimes people have very specific acute difficulties that can be helped with treatment approaches that go hand in hand with certain diagnoses. Yeah. So so that's been one area of shift, and but then there are areas that are completely the same and haven't shifted at all
since the day I met
which
you.
is probably our glasses of Chardonnay.
Yeah.
Just being with people in a way that is normalizing, that's built in love and compassion and a commitment to be to hold what they say with an open spirit and non-judging and respect and integrity. So to me, that's kind of ethics, the ethics of this work, and it's what fuels me, it's what motivates me.
I really want to unpack that, because that's, as you know, one of the things that I delight the most when I'm speaking with you is how you do that. And it's not a how, it's who you are when you're doing that. When your clients, patients, what do you call them either? Clients. When your clients come to you and I'll just create a scenario for you and change it however you want. A client comes to you, the walls are up, the boundaries are way too rigid, no one's getting in, they're high on protection, defensiveness, and the need to repel. Could you paint a picture of perhaps, hypothetically, how you would go about helping them see that there can be self-trust, or what are you thinking about? I won't put words in your mouth. I'd be thinking about self-trust. What would you be thinking about?
Yeah, I think I'm thinking about other trust.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about how can I create a safe place for this person to begin to trust that my agenda is nothing more than what I am hoping will be helpful and healing to her or him.
Yeah.
So that it's truly joined and connected. I really ultimately think it's all about connection.
Yeah.
And when someone comes in so well defended, they've been hurt in connection.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping to be one small repair for them.
That it can be safe.
Yes.
That their emotions will be safe.
Yes.
That there are bits that they've been rejecting will be safe with you.
Exactly. And sometimes it takes time. For some people, 1 or 2 conversations does the trick.
Yeah.
And for other people, it takes, I think, the passage of time and repeat experience to really
I agree.
heal and to
understand.
To rehearse. Yeah.
To rehearse. Okay, so what happened last week's consistent this week. I can count on that and I can build on that. This is how I can respond in this moment. It's a bit safe for me to respond that way. And they can rehearse it with you in a safe environment and attempt it in practice in the real world and experience it.
And people can tolerate an expression of my emotions. They can tolerate hearing what my thoughts are. They can tolerate aspects of myself that I'm not sure are tolerable.
Yes. That was a big part of my healing, as you know, for me, was embracing all of me and not feeling the need to suppress it, hide it, deny it, get angry with it, judge it.
Yeah.
Would you say that's a big piece of what you do?
Completely.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think when things are so scary that we can't even identify themselves, let alone risk saying it out loud with another person, they just sit and grow and fester and become very toxic.
And real. They seem very real.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. It reifies the problem, which doesn't even, very often it's not a problem, but it becomes a problem. So my hope is to make these things talk aboutable and with compassion, people understanding where they're coming from and that it's okay and that there are more options, kind of about expanding options for what you do with these feelings, beginning with non-judging.
Accepting.
And accepting.
Accepting's a big part of it.
Huge.
I didn't even know that was the thing, Jen, as you know. I could accept my feelings?
Yes.
What are you talking about? What is this strange, magical, mystical words you're using?
Yes.
Accept.
Yes.
And now I can't coach without.
Yeah.
Just holding. I always teach coaches, we're holding our clients with our hearts as we're using cognition. But if that piece isn't there, this won't have an effect.
Right.
What's your way of interpreting that? Because I know a big part of what you do, you're thinking about different approaches and different choices. That's an inevitability. But a big part, huge part, most of what you do is holding the client. Can you talk to that in your own way?
Yeah, it is a holding space, and all of, I'm conscious as we're having this conversation about, the many people who have preceded me in terms of these terms and concepts, that they are not original ones.
Yeah.
They're just very dear to me.
Yes.
And yeah, it is. It's a holding. It's a body and a mind experience, and it's relational. And it's all three of those happening at the same time. And so I think it starts with me being aware with my own my own feelings, my own body, my own head, and really making it all about the client.
Yeah.
And putting in check anything that's coming up for me if I'm having moments of, okay, I don't know where I'm going to go from here. It's a signal to just slow it down and check in with the client. And together we find our way. No two therapy sessions
Ever.
are the same. I mean, that's why models are great and they can help us from getting lost, but there is so much creativity that happens in any session.
Yeah. I can't ever say I've done the same session twice in thousands of sessions.
It's not possible.
It wouldn't make sense.
Right. If it is happening twice, then I would say, okay, that's paint by numbers.
It is. I think that's where I began when I was doing student-to-student triads with supervision. I would have begun with, I've got my 12 questions, thank goodness.
Yeah. You need a script.
I needed it. Yeah. I needed the script. I needed to be able to turn the page noisily.
Right. Yeah.
So the client knew I was turning the page and I would need to read the second page.
Yeah.
Because it gave me, but the client knew I was a rookie with the L plates on.
Yeah.
So I felt very safe in that environment.
Totally.
Because they were like, no, read the question. And they would be with me as a comrade, a colleague, encouraging. But there does come a moment where we have to learn to fly. Right. That leap, which to me is the favorite thing ever. That leap. When I'm with the client and I know I've got all these models and all these ways I could draw and inspiration, these beautiful people who create Satir and all of them who just created such beauty and approaches and philosophies, and it all fades away. It just disappears from the periphery of my mind and all I see is the client. And that's all there is. There's me. There's not even me. There's the client. And I'm just feeling like I'm throwing a cloak of protection over this client. The models and everything else float away. They don't matter anymore.
Or they're so assimilated that there's nothing conscious going on.
I can't notice them.
Yeah. They're there.
They're there.
But they're so integrated.
Yeah.
And I think what you were talking about, having the script and how the people you're working with are so gracious. And to me, that comes from transparency and a spirit of collaboration. And so everyone has their own style, but that is definitely my posture. And so I have yet to meet a person that with more people I could count, and we achieve a mutual respect that is based in honesty, and I have to be able to be honest about my approach.
Transparency is a huge part of how you operate. Can you unpack that a little bit for me? It sounds so obvious, transparency.
It's such a buzzword, too.
Yeah, yes. Can you unpack it and turn it into a process for us?
The process for me it's about honesty. It's about probably a need that I have for me to be sort of, we have to wear clothes that we feel comfortable and authentic in. For me, transparency is a way of being with people that allows me to be most comfortable, so that I don't have any sense of, I might have boundaries, but I'm not having secrets. I'm not holding something over the client that the client isn't aware of. That is not a good recipe for me. So I have to work to find ways to be appropriately disclosing and authentic about what I'm thinking, what I'm concerned about, where I'm coming from, and that feels very genuine and connected.
Do you do it in real time as that thought, feeling, cognition comes to you? Or do you sometimes hold it thinking it'll be a little appropriate once this is more appropriate when this is wrapped up? Do you have a sense of time and space around it? Or is it in the moment?
Both.
Both, yeah.
It often comes in the moment. But then it often has to wait. And sometimes I'm not aware, or I don't have a frame that I'm comfortable with. Like, I know there might be a conversation that needs to happen, but I don't have the words to say it. I've learned I am not opening my mouth to go there until I know why I'm doing it, what I'm going for, and how I'm going to say it.
Another big piece of this, maybe this is the time to drop it in, is do no harm. And I don't have the right language. One of your goals is for the wholeness of the client and the well-being of the client. And I'm wondering how I imagine transparency for you is vital for that outcome. to allow the client to see your reflections back openly without censorship. They're neatened up, I get that. But you do give the truth. How is that linked? That's my question. How is that linked to helping the client's wholeness? I know it is, but I'd love you to unpack that.
I think that's trust. I think it's authenticity, and I think it's connection.
Yeah.
We wire ourselves in relationship. I mean, mirror neurons. We are not actually separate entities. We are all commingled, whether we're aware of it or not. And it's very powerful. Sitting here with you, just a few feet away, when we pick up on each other's energies. Yeah. And if you don't know about the truth about my context, about why I'm saying and being the way I am being, you're in the dark. Yeah. Yeah. And that to me is a breach.
Tell us more about that.
To some extent, or it's potentially a breach
of
trust and connection. And how, and if I think ultimately it is about raising awareness, non-judgmental awareness, that we are hoping for people so that they can survey, they can step back from their worried thoughts and feelings, stuck behaviors, and assess, is this working for me or not? Yeah. It's pretty simple.
I love it. It's very simple. Just do that.
So we have to be able to step back ourselves and assess how
So
is this
are you
going?
seeing yourself in third position sometimes when you're in the session?
Yeah, I try to really, that's so what, one of the many gifts that I've come across include mindfulness, and John Kabat-Zinn in particular has been hugely influential to me. Taking a witnessing position just helps me when I'm feeling stuck to get unstuck.
There was a whole pathway I wanted to go. I'll come back to that if I remember it, but something's just come up to me then. A lot of times when people are starting out in this, they bring their own stuff into it. What would you suggest is because you don't. You're very clean. I call it very clean work that you do. That's always my goal. Does that make sense to you, the word clean? It's not enmeshed with my stuff, as much as it can be. My ego, my issues, my fears, my life, whatever's going on for me is separate to this precious moment with the client. I call that very clean work. It's messy work when the person is feeling what the client's feeling and is getting hooked into the drama of what the client is sharing. And the question I get all the time from people starting out is, how do you do that, Sharon? How do you separate? Why I care so much, so why don't you feel what I feel? Like somehow it's not caring if I don't feel what the client feels. Yeah. Can you talk to that a little bit?
It's a great, it's so central to the work that we do. Yeah. Right? And the truth of the matter is, we do pick up what our clients are feeling. And I do have my own stuff that I become aware. I think the trick is, it's actually being aware that I have my own stuff happening right now. And then that's the piece that a disaster would be not being aware and then continuing the conversation. Yeah. That's reactivity, that's enmeshment. Yeah. And so I want to be catching myself. And for me, it's very helpful to start with the body. And I think that's why I kind of work with that with clients, because I find it so helpful. Yeah. And then taking a step back from it and talking and sort of being my own supervisor here. Yeah. It's all in service to the client, which is kind of paradoxical because we're talking about it's all connection. Yeah. But this is if it's not going to benefit the client, I'm not going to go there with whatever the conversation might be or whatever my response might be. Yeah.
I know there have been times I've been with a client. I've done this for quite a while. I separate emotional reactivity for feeling state that I expose to the client. I'm really conscious of the difference. So emotional reactivity is someone tells me something that hooks me somehow personally and I associate into it. I can't think of an example, but I'm just right now clenching my fist. Something happens, I feel my emotional reactivity. Versus a client shares something with me and it's so painful to them, me showing empathy. So I'll have tears appear in my eyes. They never fall because they're not here to comfort me. But I'll well up and I'll have such a feeling face of empathy and maternal, I'm with you with your hurt right now. And I want to separate that for anyone listening from emotional reactivity of me not controlling, managing, being aware, and just blurting out, oh my God, that's terrible. There is a complete distinct difference.
Yeah.
And that's really important. Yeah. And it's one of the things I learned from you very early on. In our relationship, you would mirror back if I shared something with you that was painful and had hurt me in my past or whatever it was. You mirrored to me in a very maternal way, held me with your face. You softened your features. I mean, just to get really clinical about it, but you softened your features and you said, oh, Sharon, and your tone was so gentle. And that piece was magically healing to me. Magically healing. And I know you know the process you did, and enabled me to feel what I felt and know it'd be safely received. I have taken that into my work, and it is beautiful to reflect back. That's gotta really hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. There has to be, you give me too much credit, as I've said many times, but I need to put that on record. You give me way too much credit.
It's now on record.
Okay.
I love it.
People do need to feel felt.
Yes.
That's connection.
Yeah, it is.
That's safe. That's trust.
Yeah.
That's the proof that they're okay. That's the proof that they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And that's the holding space right there.
Is. Yeah.
And it's often nonverbal.
Yeah.
So I agree. It is, as one wise supervisor told me, it's okay to cry. Just don't cry harder than your client.
Oh, I love that.
And
I love that. I love that.
It's wonderful.
Yeah. My benchmark is the tears can appear, but they can't fall because I can't have the client now worried about reassuring me.
Exactly. And clients are deeply moved when it is a genuine, and very often the most distressing content or experience will happen or be disclosed in a session, and I won't have tears, and that's fine too. You just
it's not a requirement.
No,
we're not suggesting here now is the time to cry.
It used to be considered such a no-no.
Yes, that's why I'm bringing it up, because of the expert status of the therapist.
Exactly. Those old modernist days.
Yeah.
But I do, I think one of the, I'm not sure if we've talked about kind of just normalizing, but that's such a big, I mean, there's nothing bigger in my concept of things than normalizing. And truly, I do believe that all behavior makes sense in its context.
It does.
All behavior.
It does.
No matter how deviant it might be, it makes sense.
Yeah. Yes.
And so if we just have to peel back and begin with the premise of this makes sense that you're doing this, or that you're feeling that, or that you're thinking that, or that this has happened. And, hurt people. Yeah. It's how it goes.
It is.
Until
it's what they know until they don't.
And we repeat patterns until we repair them.
Yeah.
And
so the
repair has to be a normalized. People have to feel that they are normal in their context.
I think it's one of the first steps for repair. That I can. One of the things I learned from Bradshaw is shame loves shadows, and that was a light bulb to hear it put so perfectly and succinctly. Because when the client's with me, and I won't speak to your experience, but when the client's with me, if they can out the stuff that they thought was too ugly for the light, and it's normalized by me, so I acknowledge it, I normalize it, I validate that is their experience. And
use the words, say it out loud. Yeah. Repeat back.
Exactly. Yeah. That no matter how ugly they think it is, I'm so comfortable with it.
Yeah.
It enables them to stop treating it like the secret in the bunker, in the cellar.
Right.
So if it's got light, now I can do something about it.
Yeah.
So it becomes the beginning of the change process to me. What's your
100%.
experience? You have that experience?
I mean, definitely.
Yeah.
To me, I think that's largely what therapy is. It's helping identify what's going on. It's not always deep shame related, but it's being able to find words. It's being able to construct words around feelings and behaviors. And what we're doing even in this conversation, it's social construction. I mean, we identify our thoughts in the process of being together in conversation. We're creating something in the act of talking with another person.
Yeah.
And what we can't talk about, it's very hard to access it, to make changes around. And then we worry. Oh,
and if
people knew this.
Yeah, I was about to say
boy.
that. If we can't talk about it with the therapist or with the coach or whoever who's our partner in this journey, we then can't take it publicly. So I always think that the client with me is being able to rehearse how it could be great out there. So if I can give them a great experience, and by great I mean normalized, accepted, embraced, and still feel compassion, still feel accepted, still feel that we're together, that gives them rehearsal. Oh, so it can be like that out there.
Totally.
So they get to experience
we're
a
the
different
microcosm.
Yes.
Yep. Everything exactly. How you do anything is how you do everything. And exactly, it's so relevant.
Yeah.
And
so I rehearse with the client. I'm always feeling I am in the session replacing every other person who they feared would respond badly, or would cause them to want to protect themselves, or would give them reason to pause in terms of being their fully authentic self. So I feel the responsibility and a joy around it. I represent everyone they haven't met yet, or everyone who has ever shut them down, and I get the opportunity to help them do it over by being accepting, embracing, loving, compassionate into them in the face of their shame, like fully embracing and with no hesitation. There's just no hesitation in me whatsoever, because I'm just thinking they get to now rewrite some of that and they can experience it differently. Do you have a relationship to that? Do you have a way of interpreting that that's your way?
I think I would describe that in similar terms. That it is absolutely an opportunity to repair.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not necessarily about repair, but it's about just people coming in and they're just stuck. What they're trying isn't working.
Yeah.
So there isn't really necessarily big time repair work, but let's just think out of the box. So what might work more effectively for you than what you've been trying.
Yes.
And that's very generative and exciting in a very different kind of way. But I think the process of conversation and connection and trust and normalization is central to that. It's just as central to that work as it is to traumatic repair work.
Yeah. So it constantly comes back to that launching pad.
For me, it does.
It does me as well. That is the launching pad.
Yeah, that's the only reason I'm bothering to be in the room. I mean, that's not,
How wonderful.
That is the biggest ethical commitment that I can think of.
You always describe it to me, you're very consistent in describing it as an ethical commitment. I know you as that's just who you are. It's not an ethical decision you're making. It's simply your being. I don't know that you would know how not to do that or be that. That's an inevitability with you, Jen. I don't think it's an ethical decision, inverted commas, you're making. I think it's just who you are. That's there consistently, and I can't even imagine how it wouldn't be.
Well, I appreciate your words. See, too kind. But I think also in thinking on a meta level, thinking about the work I'm doing and thinking about difficult client situations where I'm maybe feeling less effective or stuck myself to some extent. Okay, where are we going to go from here? How can I best help this person? And certainly in training of students who are becoming therapists or working with other therapists in a supervision capacity. I find that a very helpful home base to come back to and to say out loud with people, because I like the rule of thumb that if the client were overhearing this conversation, would the client be okay with it?
Yes.
And if not, why are we saying it?
I love it.
Change the way you're saying. We have to hold our people in our hearts with kindness and respect and dignity. And
with them and when they're not there.
Exactly. In our hearts and in our heads. And I think it's the
humanity of them that matters.
It feels to me like an ethical violation when that's not happening.